Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can really help the show reach more loss and infertility families by taking a moment to leave a positive review or rating on Apple or Spotify. Also, check us out on Patreon for exclusive bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/Finding Hope After Loss. You can also check out more information about the episode in the show notes at journeyforjasmine.com. Today, I am talking with Sara and Brady. Their journey began with male factor infertility and quickly became more complex after Sara was diagnosed with diminished ovarian reserve. Their first round of IVF resulted in only one viable embryo, which led to a miscarriage. They continued to search for answers, including traveling to Barbados for a second IVF attempt, which produced no viable embryos. Eventually, they turned to embryo adoption and were able to get pregnant with the first donor embryo transfer. They are sharing their story to bring hope and encouragement to others who are navigating infertility. Hello, everyone. Today, I am here with Sara and Brady. Can you guys tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, we got married in the middle of a pandemic. So good old 2020 wedding. Thankfully, we were able to still have it because it was in September. And I guess just like any couple, we kind of just wanted to, wait a little bit and just enjoy the time together. And then, we kind of just
spent that time we were finishing college, kind of getting into our careers a little bit. And I think it was at the same time we kind of decided that it was about time to have kids and we were just ready to be parents. And that kind of led us down the journey where we are now. So,
So what do you guys do for a living?
So I am in marketing and communications. I work for an electric cooperative.
Yeah, I do payroll for a sunflower company. So Biggs and Spitz sunflower seeds, we process all of those. So I do the payroll, working with human resources and finances, kind of turning the people data into financial data. So, yeah.
Oh, payroll. We all like to pretend we don't know how to do payroll because we don't like it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the hidden things that you take for granted, the payroll people. It's just that as long as your money is there, it's fine. But it's pandemic when it doesn't hit right.
Yeah, you always want to be friends with the payroll person, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So do you guys mind sharing a little more about your journey so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start? Because we kind of
we started with me a little bit. So I suppose it was, I don't even know, maybe like 10 years ago, I found out that I had low testosterone and they kind of diagnosed it as Kallman syndrome, which is just me naturally having very low testosterone levels. So in the treatment plan for that was to go on synthetic testosterone. And in doing that, I did ask the question about fertility in the future because at that time I was with Sara, and that was something that I thought about. And my endocrinologist at that point said that I would just have to switch my medication and that it would be no problem. Lo and behold, a long time from then, that was the biggest lie we've heard. So I was taking testosterone, and then that kind of led up until when we decided we wanted to start our family. I went in right away to the endocrinologist and decided to switch my medication as I thought it was that easy. Went there, they actually referred me to our reproductive medicine, where they actually prescribed me HCG. So for quite a while, I was taking HCG and testosterone. So my sperm levels were not coming up because I was still taking the testosterone, because they never told me to stop taking it when I started taking HCG.
And it kind of just equaled out, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's one's doing one thing, the other's trying to do the other, and it's like a magnet. It just wasn't going to go anywhere.
Moving.
Would have been helpful information to know, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Leave out the small details. And then it was probably like another 3 or 6 months. We did a couple more sperm samples, and the numbers were still very, very low. But at the last test they did, they said that it would be enough to do IVF. So that leads us to our appointment of kind of what that looked like for us.
Yes. We had the consultation in the fall of 2022. And sitting in that appointment, we knew we had the male factor. And then the nurse basically was like, IVF is your only option. And like, we look at each other and we're kind of like, okay, like we thought that this was like the golden ticket. Like this was going to be the chance to like build our family, the answer and the prayer that we've been, waiting for. And then we started the first round of IVF in February of 2023. And I was absolutely terrified of shots. I mean, I still don't like them.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan. I've obviously grown to accept them because that's just part of the process. But Brady administered all of the shots, and I'm just so grateful for that. He really just was like the
nurse.
And just it made everything so much more smooth and like easier for me. And I'm super, super grateful for that. So then, we did egg retrieval on Valentine's Day. So that was
That's a very special date for us.
Yeah, very romantic. And obviously with IVF, you're getting monitored the whole like stim process. And when we did egg retrieval, we just thought, we've looked at Google, we looked at Pinterest, obviously, like looking at these numbers, like, oh, some people are getting 20, some people are getting like 30, like all these big numbers. And I remember waking up from egg retrieval and I was like, how many eggs do we get? Obviously, like, and the nurse was like, 5. And it's like, hold on, what?
Yeah, what happened,
And then, at that point, they basically explained that I had diminished ovarian reserve. And the frustrating part is like, they suspected it from the very beginning with my low AMH, but they never like disclosed that because they didn't want to like scare me or like scare us of like the diminished ovarian reserve and stuff like that. So after the fact, very frustrating. I mean, obviously, first time IVF, we're still learning all the things. We didn't really know all the questions to ask and whatnot. And then, basically that dwindled down. We had 4 were mature, 3 fertilized, 2 made it to the blast stage, and then only 1 viable embryo after the PGTA testing. And then, we transferred that April 11th of 2023. And obviously waited the whole 2 weeks. We didn't test early. We didn't want that,
wanted a surprise.
We didn't want any like false positives or anything. And it worked. We had a positive test and we were so excited.
Yes. We were going in expecting to get pregnant and we did. And it was just like, felt like the process worked, right? And we were so happy. We were nervous at the time though, because that was our only one, and for us, our issue we knew was just trying to get pregnant. So we thought once we got pregnant, hey, we're going to have our child, however, changed a little bit.
Shortly after, I suppose, I can't remember, around maybe that 5.5, 6 weeks, I had started to bleed a little bit. And obviously that always raises some concern. And at the very beginning of the week, it was just like a light spot. So I let the doctor know. And then by the end of the week, they're like, okay, we'll get you in on Friday. Just kind of wait it out and see. And I was at work on Friday and the appointment wasn't until the afternoon. And that morning or mid-morning, I actually started to bleed like heavier. And so very like traumatizing. And I don't know how much detail I should get into, but for anybody who knows that experience of like bleeding, it was absolutely like terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we were thankful that we had the appointment later that day. And we go in, they do the ultrasound, and we see baby's heartbeat. So we're like, whew, like, okay, like
we felt good.
That's good. But then the doctor came in after the ultrasound and was like, you have a really, really large subchorionic hemorrhage. And unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. Just have to like wait it out and just pray, that like baby continues to grow and you just kind of like pass that hemorrhage. And that's just all we can do. So that was really devastating just because it was so much blood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, if this isn't a miscarriage, like I'm not sure what is, because it was like heavier than my like heaviest period. And so then by that Saturday, everything kind of cleared up and we had a following appointment on that next Thursday. And so I had stopped bleeding. So we kind of thought we were just in the clear.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, it passed, we're good. I'm still feeling, the symptoms. I'm still nauseous. I'm still whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we go in on Thursday, and this appointment was just a little bit different. And maybe you want to share from your point of view.
Yeah, since I could see the monitor of the ultrasound and, just seeing the whole process, I know, Sarah, you were told to just kind of be calm and just like be relaxed. But as I was watching, the first time I could see the heartbeat the week before, and this week I see her flipping through the different screens and I'm not seeing that. And so I look at the nurse technician and, I could just almost tell on her face that something was wrong. And, at that point, we kind of just asked the question, like, where is the heartbeat? And that's when she came out and said, there is no heartbeat.
Yeah, she's like, I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat. And I feel like my heart just like, I don't know, like sank so heavy. I remember just like bawling and like my whole, like my heart literally just like ached because that was like our one shot of like our family. And from there it was just kind of
and we didn't know what was next. And of course that was the technician that told us that. So we had an actual doctor's appointment after, like, 5 or 10 minutes after the doctor came in and we talked, and she kind of just went into like next options. And it was just kind of really quick at that time of like, we didn't even have time to think.
And she's already like, okay, do you want to like miscarry by yourself or pass the tissue by yourself? Do you want to take the pill or do you want a DNC? And it was like, my whole world just came crashing down.
And then they were talking about another cycle when that could start. And it was just like, we just didn't even have an answer. We were still just going through our emotions at that time.
Yeah, very, very numb at that point. So we decided at that point just to try to let my body like pass the tissue naturally. Unfortunately, they give you like 2 weeks to try to pass it naturally. And my body did not do that, which is also kind of a hard thing because you're like, dang, like my body is already feeling like I'm failing because I don't have enough eggs. And now it's like, I can't even like miscarry normally. Like it just is like a weird, I don't know, situation and feeling. So we did have to do a DNC. And at that point, Brady and I were grieving very differently. So we were like not on the same playing field for grief. And that was very hard. So
it was just very different for both of us. I think we both kind of shut down, and I didn't know what was next for us. I didn't know if wanted to try again or, what our other options were, a timeline, because it felt like, you're never getting younger. So it's like, you kind of got to go ahead and choose your decision on what you're going to do next sooner than later. And it's just overwhelming at that time. We went to couples counseling there for a while, just trying to get on the same page. And I would say that did help a lot. And then I just think it came down to the point where it was like, like, let's try again. Like, what else will we lose out of it? Maybe this round it'll be different. So that's actually when we went ahead and started looking at different options. We went with our local clinic. Now we know all the situation that's going on, like Sarah's diminished ovarian reserve. And then we also found out
that I have autoimmune issues on top of that. And so, we learned very quickly through just research and like social media and following other people's stories that it's not just a box protocol that you're put in. It should be a more customized approach to like your fertility treatment. And so we really tried to search out a clinic that would be that best fit for us. So long story short, we found Barbados. So out of the country, IVF abroad.
Yes, very scary. But I think the thing that sold us really was having these consultations with doctors telling us, what their plan of action would be. We had this consultation with a doctor down there, and we got the consultation right away. We didn't have to wait 3 months to get in to talk to somebody. So that was one thing. They're very responsive. And then this doctor was very up and up on, the new studies, going to conventions and just being a part of that science field where he kind of knew. It seemed like we could trust him and, put our faith into him and what he can do for us.
He was like the first doctor that actually, I feel like, told us like it was. Like he didn't try to sugarcoat it in a way where like, oh, it's fine, like, whatever. But he was also very professional and like nice about it, very educational.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that really was like, oh, okay, like you can tell that they like, we're not just a number, we're a person and we matter, and they're going to pay attention to those things.
And I think the final thing that kind of sold us on that was obviously the cost. And that was one of the biggest things for us is, what clinic are we going to choose? Clinics vary wide in the range that an IVF cycle costs. And with the cycle that we were going to do in Barbados, with our travel and everything included, we could get that for the same price that we could here in the States. So that was one of the things that made us actually choose that. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say the beaches and, having a small vacation, that did weigh a little bit on our decision. And that was a little bonus, but
it's wild because when you look back at the cost, you could fly there, have your IVF treatment, get medications from overseas to the States, stay there, eat, and everything, all for like the same price out of like pocket here in the States.
That's crazy.
It's absolutely like
it is very crazy,
mind-boggling. But yeah, so that round they actually put me on double the medication in hopes that my body would respond with like the diminished ovarian reserve, and then they put me on Lovenox to help with some of like the autoimmune side of things. And that was an adjustment with that. Obviously, insurance is always a pain in the butt, so we had a lot of back and forth with insurance. But when we went to Barbados, again, we were in this great mindset. We thought that Barbados was going to be this answer again. And quickly that took a turn. When we did the first ultrasound for the egg retrieval, I only had like 6 follicles. And
the doctor it surprised us, but the doctor's reaction, he was saying that, he didn't expect anything different. With diminished ovarian reserve, you're only going to be able to produce so many eggs each time. Taking more medication is not going to change that. Mm-hmm. So just hearing him say that, plus being confident of the results that he could still provide, mm-hmm. that helped a little bit, but definitely, we were on a high at the top of the trip. We were ready for this cycle. We were ready for new results. And just the first thing that kind of hit us was that. So definitely something in the back of our mind as we went on our trip.
Yeah, I feel like that changed my perception of the whole thing, because for whatever reason in my head, I just thought that things would be different. Like we'd maybe get like 12 eggs or something. And so I felt like that probably crushed me at the very beginning. And I wasn't in a very good headspace the rest of the time. Unfortunately, even though you're in like paradise, you're there for medical reasons, and maybe not always, the vacation part. But yeah, we did egg retrieval. Obviously, it's very different doing that in a different country. Things are maybe not like what you expect. It's super high class facility. We absolutely loved and adore Barbados.
And would recommend it, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, then I come out, and then this time they're like, you got 4 eggs retrieved. And it's like, oh my gosh.
And I think that's when it really hit you mentally, that your mind shifted.
Yeah. And I just couldn't get, I feel like, out of that funk of just like downness. And then of course, like the next day they let us know that only 2 were mature. And then the next day they're like, hey, only 1 fertilized. And then the other one, we don't know. And then
at that point, we had finished our time at Barbados. So we were traveling home. We spent a night in the airport, and we were finally on the final leg of our trip. And they told us they were going to call at a certain time. So we made sure that we were ready. And as we were walking off the plane, my phone rings right as soon as I walk past the pilot's cockpit, and pulled Sarah aside and turned the phone on speaker and kind of just huddled around. And yeah, that's when we got the news that one didn't make it.
Yeah. So then we basically went all the way to Barbados to do a round of IVF, and we came back empty-handed. So that was like
That was tough.
That was hard.
Yeah.
And again, we kind of weren't quite on the same page after. On like, we knew we needed to do something, but it was like, what was that? And the Barbados doctor actually introduced us to embryo adoption. And so that kind of got into our mind. But then we're also like, well, what if we try a different clinic in here in the States? Because like, you know, I'm maybe not quite ready to give up on like our DNA.
And we learned a little bit about each cycle, you know,
Mhm.
like the raising the medication didn't help with this, but what if we lowered this, or, you know, like play around with different medications. And I think that was one part in my mind where it's just like, you know, we've tried twice and there was no drastic difference. I don't think anything that they can do can change, you know, part of how big the outcome is and how many eggs we retrieve.
Mhm.
So I was kind of set on doing embryo adoption because at this point, you know, like I told Sarah, I'm just ready to be a dad and, you know, just keep it going on, just being brought down. Like, I don't know how many times I could handle just being, you know, taking the bad news. So that's kind of what I had in my mind. Sarah was a little bit different.
Yeah, it took me a long time, I feel like. So we went to Barbados in 2024 in February. So kind of following a year after our first cycle. And yeah, we kind of didn't really come to a conclusion until like June of 2024 on like what we wanted to do. And I just like looked inward and I talked to my like women's Bible study group, and they just really helped me like open my heart up to the way that Brady was like, I just want to be a dad, and like lean into that and like trust him in his decision, and just really like lean into our faith just a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
And finally it was like, okay, like embryo adoption, I feel good about that. Like, let's go for it. So now what does that look like? That's a whole new ball game.
Well, and with that, we were like, okay, we made up our minds, and it's like, okay, now let's have this baby, you know, like this is the step towards it. However, you know, finding a donor is not an easy process either.
Right.
So we actually were going to try ourselves until we found Embryo Connections, and we started to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
We found a Facebook page that we were going to maybe possibly try to match with somebody on the Facebook page. That way it would take some of the burden of the cost off on us having to go through an agency. So I would say, how long? Maybe a couple months of us.
Well, we started the Facebook group first, and we tried that for about a month because some of the people that I had talked to, like, oh, we matched in a day or we matched in a week. And it's like, oh, okay, like maybe this will be quick. And for some people it is, but for us, it wasn't. So then, then we moved, I think in July, to going with Embryo Connections, and then got all set up. And then they send you profiles based on like your preferences. Usually each week they'll have at least like one match for you to like look over. And we just weren't finding like things that would like match our preferences. And so, kind of week after week, it was like you get this email and you're so excited. You're like, hey, there's a match.
Well,
like,
and I feel like,
look at it.
And we didn't know if we were too picky because some weeks we wouldn't get an email. And it was just like, you know, slowly like that. And after a couple months of that going by, you know, is kind of hitting a little bit of like, you know,
this might take a while.
This might take a while, you know, and we thought it was going to be something quicker. And then I feel like basically 2 miracles hit in a row when.
So in September, I got a message from someone on Facebook saying like, hey, I'm an embryo donor and we have, 8 embryos that we would love to like donate to you. Here's our, story, like would love to chat with you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like one that she like was like chose us, and 2, I was like, wait, she's got 8. Like every other one that we've been like getting has maybe like 3, maybe 4, if
at the most,
if you're lucky. So we had a phone call with her, and it absolutely was like the perfect fit after that phone call. Like we could just feel it in our heart that she was supposed to be like our donor family.
Yeah. And she also expressed that she felt that way to us as well. Like she was meant to be our donor. Like they went through the IVF process to like help out a couple like us. And I don't know, just hearing that, it was just a good feeling and whatnot. So yeah, from there we Well, and then
basically all summer we were looking at all these different grants to try to like help accommodate some of the cost. And yeah, we probably did literally
all the
pretty
ones that
much
are
all the ones
available.
that you can that we qualified for, we applied for. And then shortly after that, about a month of like being like, okay, we're gonna like match with this couple, we received a grant from the Hope for Fertility Foundation, and we were absolutely like blown away. First it was supposed to just be like an interview, but then they did a Skype and they told us,
They surprised us
that
and
like,
told us we
hey,
won.
congratulations, you won. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that really helped us wrap up the embryo adoption process.
And the thing with that is we only had 6 months to use those funds. So luckily we had that couple matched with us, because if we didn't have that match, we wouldn't have been able to use the funds towards our adoption process, just because we wouldn't be going through that. So just like feeling like those two just lined up so perfectly at the same time that it couldn't work out any better.
Yeah. So kind of fast forward, we did all of the legal work, all the whatever.
Which is a lot more work than people online say.
Yes.
I'll tell you that.
Yes. We are thankful for the agency, because they really took care of like all of the headache and all of the little things that you just don't think about that clinics require, that are kind of just like unwritten things.
Yep.
So we chose CNY Fertility because they were one of the more affordable clinics, and that they actually did work with embryo adoption. So just here in April of 2025, we went down for our first embryo adoption transfer. And I have to say, I mean, it was like the most magical thing, because throughout this whole process, when we lost our first embryo, we actually named her Eden, and we did the transfer April 11th, found out about the miscarriage May 11th. And then her due date was supposed to be December 28th. And Matthew 11:28 was a verse that just like jumped out on me. And it says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And so for the past like 2 years, like that verse has just like been like our saving grace, essentially, just being like, okay, like the Lord, he's going to be there. Like he will give peace. So when we did the transfer, it was getting closer to 11 o'clock. And I like turned to Brady. I'm like, oh, like how cool would it be if it happened at 11 o'clock? And sure enough, it did. It happened at 11, and they printed out the, ultrasound picture of where they, put the embryo. And I looked at the timestamp, and I like just immediately started crying, because it legitly said 11 o'clock on the dot and 28 seconds. And I just like knew, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like
this was a miracle.
This is it. I don't know. That's a God wink. I don't know what
exactly.
is. And so we left feeling really good. And fast forward, you go through the whole 2-week wait, and then we get the results.
Yeah. And it was kind of different. So instead of having the doctors call us and tell us the results, we actually had received the test results online through the portal that Sara has. And we were sitting down about to record a reaction. I'm like, hold on, we have to look up. It's not going to say positive or not positive. It's going to give us a number. I was like, what number are we looking for here? So Googled that, and it was like, I don't know, it was like above 25 was pregnant. And we looked, and I can't remember, it was like in the 100 and something range.
It was like 131 or something.
Yeah. And we were just so ecstatic to see that. And
so yeah, if you fast forward today is exactly 6 weeks. So we are 6 weeks pregnant, which is an absolute miracle. But I do have to say, there's still that trauma and that like PTSD. I feel like that's like coming back, because I mean, there was a little bit of like spotting, and then it's like, okay, is that like implantation stuff? Like that's kind of a little bit normal. So I feel just like this uneasiness sometimes. I'm like
PTSD, like from what happened before. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like we're trying to be happy and excited as we go along the way, but I feel like there's some apprehension behind us in terms of like, can we stay pregnant? Like we haven't proven that, like trying just to make it to the next step or to the next week. But I think overall this time we're a lot more upbeat and excited and positive, just because God has given us so many messages and just led us on this path where it just feels like we're just truly just following him, and he's going to provide for us. So
had me like crying over here. I'm so happy with you guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. And so like Brady said, we're trying to just enjoy the miracle and just kind of take it day by day.
Now, before either of you went through this, did you know anybody else who had gone through infertility or anything like this?
No, not really.
No, I mean, when we first started telling people, I mean, that's when we found out about like your parents went through a little bit of infertility.
Yeah, they never had to do treatment.
Yeah, no treatment. They didn't have treatment back then, I suppose, too.
No,
but
they did.
Not as intense. It wasn't an option for them, really.
But yeah, so my church leader, she actually had gone through infertility herself. And then she actually they went through all that, and then they, turned to your traditional adoption route. But she kind of was that like anchor in all of it, and still kind of is sometimes with some of the feelings that get brought up. And then she introduced me to some other people. And basically, as we continue to openly share our story, we've been introduced to more and more people and have really found more of a community in this space.
What made you start sharing your story, or made you like want to start talking about it more?
Well, I guess when you asked me about what I did earlier, I also am just like an avid storyteller. So I've always loved to take pictures, and I've loved like video at a young age. And so I've actually done like wedding videography and like storytelling. And so I felt like this was kind of my avenue. Like I have these skills to tell stories, to share them. And I feel like the infertility route is just that avenue that I can like help others. And so our first round, we didn't openly share, and we kind of kept it close. But I knew at one point, like when we were through some of this, that I would want to share. And so I had all of this video and all of, whatever from that. And then basically probably the fall of 2023 is when I really started opening up about like sharing our story, and then really just making a big push in like after we went to Barbados, and just started to be more of that advocate. And then I started my YouTube channel in December of 2024, just hoping to share our story, hopefully, advocate, get some education out there, and just showcase what it's like to, live with infertility, some of those raw emotions, the realness.
Also to support those who have family members that are going through it as well. That's another big part too.
Yeah. So really educating not only just people who might be starting to go through it, but then also like, those family members. I had somebody recently tell me like, I'm so thankful that you're sharing, my daughter is going through it. And like, you really helped me understand a little bit better on how I can help her. And so it's comments like that like keep us going and sharing our story.
And Brady, what about you as a guy? I mean, I know a lot of men aren't as open to, sharing stuff like this. So what is your motivation for wanting to share?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, listening to podcasts and stuff, infertility is definitely, rising, and especially in males too. Testosterone levels like within the past 30 years have halved. So just knowing that, and then also too, just like, I think it's mainly our story specifically. It's had such an impact on my life that I feel like it's just sharing those around us, what we're going through. And like Sarah is saying, if we can help anyone along the way, that's just a bonus on the top for me. It's just the awareness piece, and just, I don't know, just getting the support out of it as well, building that support team. So not only is it family and friends, but we're actually reaching a broader audience that can kind of be that support, that they can pray for us and just be there.
I think at one point he had also mentioned, like, obviously as a male, not a lot of males talk about it. And so hopefully, like, by you talking about it, it will make others, open up a little bit and be like, oh, okay, like, I'm not the problem. It's, it's a couple thing, right? And it's okay obviously the male is half of the equation. So you're gonna see that and hopefully allow other males to,
well, see that,
up.
yeah, that there is emotions there, and it's all right to show them and just show how we are getting through this together, how we want to put it out there like this is the way it should look. Whereas a team, instead of just like the woman doing everything by herself, it does take two to go through this, I think, and to have the right mindset and to make it work out.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of times infertility is a women's issue, even though it's not just on the woman, but that's where it kind of falls.
Yeah.
So while you were going through all your treatment, like, going to Barbados and doing the embryo adoption and things like that, was your family and friends supportive of all that? Or did you ever have to deal with, people questioning your decisions or?
Mostly, I think everyone was supportive. And I think it really showed before we went to Barbados, because we actually did a fundraiser to help raise some funds. And thankfully, through an organization here in our hometown, they had like a matching program. And so we did this whole like silent auction and pancake feed. And I think that really showed me who showed up, right? Our community showed up, our church showed up, our family and friends and old coworkers. And it was just overwhelming to see like everybody being like, hey, we don't know how to help you, but like having something like this, we feel like we're helping. Yep. Right. And that was just so amazing to see everybody come together and just made us feel really special.
Yeah. And I think, as we were posting online, you see how many views you're getting or how many likes you're getting. And, sometimes you get numb to that, only 100 likes, or whatever that might be, until you see 100 people in front of you and you're like, wow, like these are actual people that are actually supporting us, actively being there for us. That was really big. And I think family as well, just being there for us, always a shoulder to cry on and, for us to vent. But I would say at the end of the day, it was kind of like Sara and I decided that like, this is our journey. Like we're going to make the decisions. If somebody thinks other, that we're just going to stay true to ourselves and do what we need to build our family. So it's on both ends of things.
That does really put it in perspective when you think about like seeing the number 100 versus actually having them like in front of you. It's a lot more than what you think.
Yes, it was.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely like, perspective and fills your heart. Just like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you guys look at any other like potential places of traveling like before you decided on Barbados, or was that kind of your first?
I think that was like the first one. My coworker at the time knew somebody who went, and I think that's kind of what allowed us to be like, oh, okay, like we were able to talk to them on the phone and actually get like the tea, right? And be like, okay, like, is this safe? Is it real? What is the like, whatever. And then we actually knew another family who said that they went to like Prague, but that seemed like the language barrier and like there was like Italy and Greece, I think, that were also, but I wasn't sure on the language barrier if I was like comfortable enough jumping into that, where like Barbados, everything is pretty much the same. They have, a little bit of accent, whatever, but it felt a little bit more reasonable and like doable.
And plus having the person that actually went before us to tell us how it was, kind of what to really expect. Because you look on the website and that's about all the information you get on the clinic. And that definitely does not portray the people that are there and how you're treated and everything like that. So I think having that person that was there before even like recommending it to us, is really a leap of faith at the same time. I mean, like, what are people going to think if we're kind of like, are we crazy going over
here? Like, you got to pack up all the medication and you got to go through customs with it and you got to do all the things. It's like, oh, what are we doing? But I do have to say, if anybody has questions about Barbados, I mean, we're here to answer them. They are hands down one of the best clinics that we have been to. Their customer service is outstanding. So to put this into perspective, we were there in February of 2024. And in December of 2024, our coordinator emailed us in December, like months after treatment, to ask us how we were doing. And that meant the world, because she knew obviously we left with nothing. But I'm like, how did she like remember, and like she thought of us, and it was just so amazing, and will just stick with us, forever. So
yeah, that's definitely not something you see from a lot of doctors here in the US.
It'll be an automated email maybe on a date or something like that.
Yeah. So no, they truly care about their patients, which is awesome.
And I mean, it seems like you guys have kind of been on both sides of like the medical care, like those who left out all the important information, and then those who, were on the complete opposite, like supportive side. So you've kind of run the whole range of that.
Yeah.
Was the one that you went with, you said it was CNU or CNY? Sorry.
CNY, yeah.
Was that good medical treatment there too, or?
Yeah, they've been pretty great. I mean, they're kind of all over the place. And so sometimes you don't always get like the same like nurse responding on like the portal and stuff.
Well, and I would say too that we're doing our monitoring in our hometown versus going to Colorado is where they do things. So it's like having the clinics work with each other to get what we need. That has actually been a lot more smooth than what we were expecting. So yeah, I would definitely say that they have good communication and definitely make you feel more comfortable when, something happens that is going to be communicated across the board.
Yeah. And like this time now, like being pregnant, I had a 5-week ultrasound, which obviously is super early, but we were able to see, the sac growing, and they're just having a little bit more monitoring with me this time. And I really appreciate that, because it kind of gives you that peace of mind, especially when we have had a loss and we don't know if I can stay pregnant. And so that has been really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if they would have let me, I would have been in there every day for an
I know. By now we have another ultrasound here in a couple days, so I'm just like, okay, I'm ready for that.
I know it seems like an eternity, like in between, and I know it's just like a week, and I know like, there's not much progress like early on, but it's just like I need to see something.
Right. Yeah. You're like, and it's weird because this time I feel like I don't maybe have as many like symptoms as I did. Like I'm not feeling overly nauseous right now, which I'm like, okay, like hopefully it'll stay that way. Like that would be a true blessing.
But you're expecting it because that's what you were last time.
Right.
So it's like you don't have that something to tell you that, hey, I'm still pregnant or this is going right, so it's tough.
Yeah, I was fortunate. Like I went through the infertility and the loss part, but at least the pregnancy part was okay. So like I didn't have the morning sickness and stuff, but I know exactly what you mean. It's like I just want like something that tells me that that it's okay, but
I know because
my boss recommended, she said that you can get a tool or something, a device where you can read the baby's heartbeat, and then you can read your heartbeat and make sure that, it's obviously faster so you can see the difference, but at least that way it's like an assurance to yourself, because when you're so, not far along, you can't feel the baby kicking as if it would be or moving around when they're, bigger. So it is a little bit of that insurance piece. So that's might be something we look into.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So if you were going to give advice to like someone who's currently going through infertility, what would your biggest piece of advice be? I know it could be a lot. That's a big question.
It is. I would just say like the biggest thing is like you're not alone, and really try to take the time to just learn as much as you can, because the more information that you know about your body, your partner's body, and just like, if you're doing IUI or IVF, just learning about that process as much as you can before you start, so that hopefully, when you get to that stage, you can be like the best advocate that you can be for yourself, because we've learned that you are your best advocate, and like no doctor is going to advocate for you like the way that you do for yourself. And so, just try to learn as much as you can. There's a whole community out there. I mean, there's Facebook pages, there's a lot of like people on Instagram, podcasts, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so just learn, because I feel like there are some information, there are pieces of information I wish we would have known ahead of time that might have, saved us some heartache in some of the search.
Mm-hmm. And I would say probably just, never giving up in faith, just keep going. And then too, I think just the biggest thing is like the bond that you have with your relationship with your spouse. Like that's probably the most special thing. Cause I think, yes, we've gone through some of the hardest times of our life in the past couple of years, but I would say we're the strongest we've ever been. And I think without that, yeah, you just have to lean on each other and be there for each other, because you're not always going to be up or down, or you need to balance the other person. If somebody doesn't have hope, you need to bring that back. And I think it's just a balance there, and then just not giving up, just continuing on, keep driving, and just know your worth and be your own advocate.
And don't forget date night.
Yes.
Yes, that's important too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that either of you would like to share or add?
I mean, if anybody has questions about our story or just wants to connect with us, they can find us on Instagram, Faith Fertility and Us, or Faith Fertility Us. I always put the and in there. I probably should add that in there. And same thing, that's the same for our YouTube channel. But we're always open to connect with people. We just really, it's a sucky community to be a part of. Like, you don't want to be a part of it. But the people in this community are just absolutely fantastic. And I feel like the most supportive people. So if you're feeling alone, please reach out. We would gladly connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Yes,
thank you
thanks
so
for having
much.
us.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Despite going through so many different twists on their journey, they never lost their faith and never lost their love and trust with one another. That can be a really hard thing during infertility and loss. For many couples, it can bring them closer together as they navigate these issues. For others, it can drive them apart and become something they simply cannot overcome. The other important issue I think it's important to highlight is that infertility and loss are not just a, quote, woman's issue. The men are affected too. Men can and do have infertility issues, and men can and do get sad about pregnancy losses or the struggle to get pregnant. And it's perfectly okay both to have these feelings and to share these feelings. More and more men are coming forward and sharing their experiences, which I think is absolutely amazing. I feel it's so important to hear from them, just as it's important to hear from the women going through it. So I'll leave this episode with saying, please continue to share your stories. Share your experiences. Speak up about both the struggles and the joys. It truly helps so many people know that they are not alone. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please take a moment to leave a positive review or rating on Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.